Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from a hot Accra. It is what it is. Just not going to say too much more about it. It's hot. It's dusty. It's Hamilton loading. It's dirty December loading. And my guest knows a little bit about some of this because she is a returning champion back on the podcast. I want to jump right into this conversation because I think it's going to be a wonderful exploration of where she's come in the last few years and where we're all headed. Let's name it. So she is a two-time New York Times bestselling author and multidisciplinary expert on current and historical understandings of race, gender, and equity. With a Ph.D. in Sociology and a Master's in Multidisciplinary Gender Studies from the University of Cambridge, in addition to a Bachelor's in Medical Anthropology from Stanford University, Chocolate Cardinal. She translates her academic knowledge into stories that are clear and engaging. Her articles have been published by Time Magazine, New York Magazine, Newsweek, The Guardian, and others. Her first book, The Three Mothers, How the Mothers of MLK Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin Shaped a Nation, came out in 2021, and we spoke last in, I think, 2022. Her second book, Erased, What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us, came out in May this year. And her storytelling also takes form in her talks, including her TED Talk that has been viewed 2 million times, as well as the scripted and unscripted screen projects she has in development. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that. Malaika Tubbs, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me back. I'm so happy to be here.
I am very happy to be hosting you again. And congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome awesomeness. Since we have new listeners since then, we'll start with our standard. Where are you from? Where are you local? What is your craft?
Okay. Also, congratulations to you on everything over the last several years.
Thank
you.
Awesome.
Going and growing, and I love it. I just love it all so much. Okay, so where am I from? I am from all over. I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but my parents, my siblings, and I moved to Dubai when I was 2. We were there for 4 years. Then we were in Estonia. Then we were in Sweden. Then we were in Azerbaijan. Then we were in Mexico. Then we were in Laramie, Wyoming. We traveled all over the place. And eventually I went to Stanford, and then I did my graduate work in England. So I was kind of going back and forth because my college sweetheart and I eventually got married. And now we're in LA. So we live in LA. We've been here for the past almost 5 years. And then the next it went really quickly.
Yep.
And okay, my craft is I am a writer and a storyteller. And I say storyteller because I'm just kind of broadening all the different ways in which I want to tell stories. And I'm so grateful that I'm an author and have 2 books out, but I also have so many ideas for TV shows and movies and just other things that I want to create. So I am exploring all of those routes while still writing books. And it's just amazing. I'm so grateful for the craft that I get to practice every day.
And I love that. Yes, we get to do the things that we love. That's an affirmation in itself.
Yeah.
Thinking about where you're from, where you are, where you're local, where, you've moved across a lot of places, and I moved quite a bit. And someone asked me recently, don't you get tired of this feeling unsettled? I don't, because it's just part of the storytelling the storyteller that is in me. But I wonder from you, where have you felt most grounded as an adult?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, for me, it feels so clear as an answer because we're in LA. 2 of our babies out of our 3 were born here. We love our home here. It's in a walkable area of LA, which if anyone's been to LA, there's so much traffic. So when you can have a walk, you feel like you just our ideal dream kind of come true.
Yeah.
So here it's been so wonderful. And especially because there's so many storytellers in LA. Storytelling makes the world go round here. And so I think when we were in Stockton, it was harder for me to really step into my identity as a storyteller because that just wasn't as much what people understood there in terms of the work of storytelling, and that it matters and it's important. And here, as soon as we moved here, it was like, oh my goodness, you write books. That's amazing. And I thought, I want to be a storyteller who also does screenwriting. I think screenwriters are so cool. And all the producers and screenwriters I've met here are so amazed that I write books. It's just been a perfect combination for the kids and their school and our neighborhood and all the opportunities. And we just have a wonderful community here. And yeah, I birthed two of my kids here. So LA feels very much like home.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of your storytelling, how has that craft evolved in the time since you now have two books and you do want to do these other things, but how have you seen it evolve and how have you purposefully attempted to evolve it?
Yeah. I think when The Three Mothers came out, for me, it was just this moment of, wow, I did it. I wrote a book. And then the reception to it was so incredible. And I didn't even realize that there was a possibility that my book could become a New York Times bestselling book. And when the numbers came back the first week that it came out, initially it did not become a New York Times bestseller, but it was very close to making it on the list, like in the top 15 books of that week. And I thought, whoa, okay, I didn't realize there was even a chance of that happening. So I say that because part of my storytelling evolving was my belief in myself evolving and my realization that I could reach more people than I ever thought. And my goal initially was, okay, write a book. Let's see what happens. I wanted as many people as possible to read it, but I just didn't know sort of what my potential was. And so then I spent that whole year thinking, okay, if we were close when it came out as a hardcover, if I can maintain the attention of people and make sure they really hear these three women's stories, maybe there's a shot of this becoming a New York Times bestseller and having that esteemed title and people finding out about the book, because a lot of us don't find out about things until it makes a list. Sadly, that's how a lot of things work. And so I just really focused in on this could happen. And so I was speaking to so many different people virtually. It was still during the pandemic. I was taking every single opportunity I could. And when the book came out in paperback, I also timed it with the release of my TED Talk and it became a New York Times bestseller. So then it was like, wow, okay, now my dream is expanding even more. I'm realizing what I'm not only capable of, but that my ideas are resonating with people and I need to get more of them out there. So it was really this shift in my mindset of if I have an idea, I got to go after it because people can find guidance in my writing. They can find comfort in my writing. They can find inspiration in my writing. So now when something occurs to me, I just say, okay, there's a reason for that. It's not just so that I can think, oh, that would be nice if someone else did that. It's more so, yeah, I can make this happen. And so I would say I now work on so many projects at the same time. I feel like I'm throwing a lot of things at the wall and we're going to see sticks, and just trusting that there is a reason I have that inspiration. So I now am working on screen projects and I wrote a script based off of The Three Mothers and trying to turn that into a film. And I had a rom-com idea that came to me. So I wrote a script for a rom-com and children's books ideas, and all at the same time of maintaining the nonfiction writing that I do, because I do love research. I'm a proud nerd. I always will be. But it's been cool to see how I can translate that into other storytelling forms. So that's how it's evolving. It's continuing to evolve.
Thinking about research, and typically people who go in advanced studies and become not professors, but getting PhDs, they settle on more of an academic style. And so you purposefully are not an academic type of writer. So in that first training, that training of being an academic writer, how did you exercise other muscles to then be able to produce your own style of nonfiction?
Yeah.
And also these other fiction types of projects that you're now getting into?
That's such a good question. It was always kind of unnatural to me to speak in or write in this academic jargon, kind of, in my opinion, performative way. It just didn't come naturally to me. That felt like such a struggle to try to it was like forcing myself to bring in theory in that way. I'm very theoretical, and everything that I write still has that deep research and thought, but my goal is to make sure I can be understood by folks who may not have a PhD in sociology. Maybe they have a PhD in computer science and still want to read my work. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity to pursue higher education and I still want them to connect with my work. Maybe they're a high school student who is interested in exploring these topics. I still want them to be able to connect with my work. And so in order to, I guess, kind of maintain and practice that, I just tried my best to continue to write in a way that felt natural to me. So even in undergrad, even in my master's, even for my PhD, I had to find the advisors who would support me in that.
That's a thing.
It's a thing. Not everybody would have. And so I'm grateful. I had to have conversations and kind of negotiations with some advisors where they would say to me, and I've always heard this, that my work was too understandable, almost too easy to connect with, and that wasn't what they were looking for in academia. And so I would say, well, does that change my ability to complete this degree? Does that change the level of my writing? And they would say, well, no, I guess it doesn't. So I just had to kind of advocate for myself and also find the right people to work with so that I didn't have to contort myself too much to get my degrees. And I'll say my dissertation for the PhD is also about the 3 women who I wrote about in my first book. And they are very different documents, right? I do some more theory into the dissertation and I'll do what I need to do to get the degree, but it still will read much more creatively than other dissertations. So if anyone else is trying to do something like that, it is a battle. You do have to come prepared. You do have to find the right people who are going to support you in doing it. And there is a little bit of kind of a compromise that you're willing to reach. And I think sometimes those exercises are helpful for me to grow and be challenged and bring in some more of that language that isn't my natural way of communicating, but it isn't what I wanted to have in my books, because my goal with my books is to help as many people as possible to understand themselves and understand each other, and to celebrate, really at the core of it all, Black women and the power of Black women, without anybody feeling like they don't get to be a part of the conversation, because this is a conversation that we all need to be having together.
Yeah. So I'm going to reframe my why the where question to be a little bit more of a why the what. And that is related to the why the what of this project, the Erase project. And so as you're talking about the reasons why your work needed to be more understandable, the first thing that came to my mind is like, that sounds like patriarchy. Like, why else? Like, why would we need to stilt it? And I think about all the legal briefs and legal docs, and it goes back to that law, which is the first thing that you bring up one of the first things you bring up in the book. Yes. Why the where? Because you started, when we last spoke, you mentioned that it was a project in the works. So tell us, how did Erased come to be?
I love that. Yeah. I mean, so first, when the 3 Mothers came out, and I was having all these wonderful conversations with people, and they were kind of going through what I see as this journey that people have when they read the 3 Mothers, which is shock of, wait a second. First, why haven't we read a book about these mothers before? That is crazy. Secondly, why did we not know that the 3 women did what their sons became famous for long before their sons existed? And why hasn't any other scholar told us that before you? Why were they erased? People feel this sense of just like, even their own understanding of their own world and the people in their lives, it's shifting when they read that book, how they appreciated their own moms or all of this, right? And so I often felt kind of surprised that people were surprised that these women hadn't been celebrated to the extent that they deserved. And I realized it's because we don't understand how patriarchy operates in the US very specifically. Americans are very good at calling out other countries and their patriarchy, but not great at understanding that we live within a patriarchal nation, and that wasn't an accident and it wasn't hidden. This was the goal that our founding fathers had. Like, even if I could have a conversation with our founding fathers right now and said, hey, you built a patriarchy, they'd be like, yeah. That's what
Hello.
That's what we wanted.
Right.
Exactly. And so it's not even a critique of them and saying like they did this on by mistake. This was what they were trying to build. And so I wanted to make sure that people had a tool to refer to that allowed us to remove the surprise and the shock of it all and instead see it for what it is and what it was designed to be. And also remove any of the need to blame each other and fight each other and more collectively turn our attention towards a system that was designed in 1776 and ask ourselves, was it serving all of us then? And is it serving all of us now? The answer is no. And so the reason it also really needed to be within my tradition of writing is that the reason people haven't been able to understand patriarchy in the US is this kind of book hasn't existed before. Yeah. Patriarchy has been written about very academically thus far. It feels very intangible for people. People get very defensive about the word patriarchy. It becomes part of this cultural war. And also, even though I knew that, I've still been surprised by how people are kind of avoiding the book simply because the word patriarchy is on the cover. I did not, even me, who I understand patriarchy deeply in the United States, did not expect so many people to not even pick it up because they're so afraid of engaging with this word. And so that made it again even clearer why the book needed to be written. And I'll lastly say that as I was already drafting the book, Roe v. Wade was overturned in the Dobbs decision. And across the nation, we were seeing people in shock and in awe saying, how could this happen in the United States? What is going on in our nation? Blah, blah, blah. And I realized, again, it was this moment of, this is why you're writing this book, because we have to remove that shock. We have to get people to transfer that energy into action and redesigning the system rather than continuously being caught off guard by the system that we live in as it was designed.
So it's interesting you say that about people being afraid to pick it up because of the word patriarchy. As I tell people about the book, I get very different reactions from men versus women. And so have you found that it is mostly men that are giving you that reaction? Are women also? Because part of the storyline is that women also reproduce patriarchy. So for gender-wise, what kind of feedback on that have you received?
It's interesting. I think the word causes reactions from everybody, I will say, but I agree with you that it is men for the most part. And people are always asking, oh, what's your next thing? What are you working on? Whatever. And I was like, oh, I'm writing a book about patriarchy. And I almost had a lot of fun with this because I wish I'd made a reel of all these different reactions before it came out, because there were some men who would be like, oh my, wow. And then they would be like wanting to tell me how much they were good men. Like, I love women.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I'm actually not like attacking men in this book at all.
At all. Yeah.
We're talking about a system all together as a team. Let's talk about this together and how it has hurt all of us. I will say some women were sort of like, oh, okay, what does that mean? I don't really understand. Haven't we said a lot about patriarchy? There's a lot of women who want to distance themselves from the dismantling of patriarchy too, because they've been told that being a feminist is this kind of radical identity and that it's something that is sort of almost to be kind of avoided. And so I was surprised by that. And I've also been very surprised by the media and kind of a lack of attention being paid to this book, because it came out at a time where it feels so appropriate.
Exactly.
Right? Read this book.
Yeah.
And I was saying so many different things already about the Trump administration because I've been writing this book for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But as everything's playing out with the elections, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is a wild time for this book to come out. And hopefully it will help people because I explain how all of this happens before I even knew what exactly was going to happen. And I'll just give it as an example. When my first book came out, this was in 2021. I was a Ph.D. candidate. I hadn't even finished my Ph.D. yet. It was my very first book. No one had any expectations of me, but the New York Times reviewed my book. They chose it as their editor's choice before it became a New York Times bestseller. Amazon chose it as an editor's choice. Time magazine published 2 of my op-eds. There was a lot of love for the 3 mothers. So then I'm writing my second book. This is my sophomore album. I'm back again. I was expecting that at least the New York Times would review my book, but they did not. They did not do it. Time magazine did not publish any of my op-eds this time. Amazon still shows it as an Amazon editor's choice. So I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you for that. But these other publications largely ignored the fact that a New York Times bestselling author was coming back with a new book. And this was really shocking to me, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it has done well. I am spoiled. Yes, it became an instant New York Times bestseller. Those things are true. But I had to work incredibly hard for that, when in reality, I should have had some of those things, not the bestseller status, because that relies on the buyers, but I still had some of the reviews guaranteed, to be honest. I earned that. And they didn't give that to me. And so then I thought, this is interesting, because yes, the book has come out at the right time, but almost too much of the right time. And some people don't want to engage in it, because everything in Project 2025, I will like the book will explain to you why it's in there. And I think that in some ways, the thing that I'm commenting on is trying to silence my book. And so it then came down to, okay, I was noticing, okay, we're not getting some of the coverage that I was expecting to naturally. I only was on one TV show. This is the other thing. We had to fight for this interview with The View. And thank God they did give me this opportunity. But again, I'm a returning New York Times bestselling author. I should have had multiple TV interviews booked. And it's a struggle to get people to say, hey, this book is worth reading and engaging in. And so I was talking even to my husband about it. I was like, we're not getting some of the attention that we thought even before the book came out. And he was like, okay, well, like, we just have to create the moment then. Let's put together some kind of big event. Let's get people excited, and planted that seed in my mind. I was like, you're right. Okay, I'm going to make this work. And the mayor of LA was really supportive. We did an event at her house. Elaine Welteroth came and did the interview with me. We brought in as many like influencers and invited people as we could, and created a moment that made it clear this is going to be a conversation. If you're not happy with me, well, then you're missing out. Like, we had to kind of create that feeling, because these traditional media sources were not helping me to do that. So when I tell you that I like fell to the ground crying when it was on the bestseller list that week, I was shocked, absolutely shocked. And then I have to give a shout out to the feminist press and Black press that covered the book. 19th News did cover it. Rachel Lindsay and Van Lathan did bring me on their podcast. Those were the things. Reese Colbert brought me on her podcast. Clay Kane. They were the ones who were putting it in front of people, because New York Times, Time Magazine, we're not. And they've continued. And I don't really know what's going on, but the reviews are coming in and they're good. The readers like this book. It's well written. So why hasn't it shown up on Time Magazine's list of books to read this year? It's being silenced in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah. There you go. One word. So it's funny, because I want to ask you about Glocal speak, and I don't want you to say patriarchy, but what is a word or phrase or saying that is now part of your local experience or your global experience, and why do you value it as that?
A word. Ooh. Oh, that's a hard one. Okay. I would say, well, I'll say the opposite of patriarchy, which is collective power. Okay. And really what we were just talking about is like, even if a system is trying to silence you, with collective power, with people coming together, with buyers saying we still want to read this book, with those independent podcasters and people still coming around me, anything is possible, truly. And I think that is, when I talk about this opposite of patriarchy, it's not necessarily a matriarchy, because I will say a matriarchy would get us to solutions faster. I'm not gonna lie. Matriarchal systems are about balance, and they're about everybody having a role to play. And it's not about one group having power over others. It's about respecting the power that we all have within ourselves. And when we're thinking about a democratic system, for example, a true democracy is a place where every person who participates in that democracy is seen as a person and their voices are heard and they have the ability to participate in that system, typically through voting. In the US, we've never experienced democracy. What we have experienced is patriarchy. But the way that we get closer to a true democracy is through collective power.
Yeah. And so I struggle because I 100% agree with you about democracy. And the US has attempted to export democracy around the world when it
That's
itself. Hello. Exactly. And so I feel like the democracy project is a failure. And so when I think about a lot of the themes, like you do express it because that is the quote unquote system that we know and understand. But when you think about imagining an alternative, and collective power is that, I loved how your last chapter imagined this other kind of way of living and way of thinking from the self-governance or community power perspective. If you could give us a little bit more of what that looks like to you?
Yeah. That's so interesting because as you were writing, you mentioned 2 different books that I plan on writing.
I love it.
What is the way in which the US has taken something that isn't democracy and entered other nations saying this is democracy?
Yeah.
So I want to do an international book because obviously I spent so much time with people. And is the way in which we can fully diagnose the issue. Like it's because we didn't have a democracy here. That's why we've failed in every other way when we've entered other. The second one is how do we now, once you know what we're up against and what we've been experiencing, actually create the alternative? And so at some point I will write those 2 books where I fully dive in beyond the answer that I'm about to give you. For me, one of the ways or kind of goals that I kind of set my sight on is in order to create this notion of everyone's being heard here and really hearing what people have to say. And I'll base this in the fact that I've lived not only in places abroad, but also in places like Laramie, Wyoming and LaPorte, Indiana. And I've met the people in these places and they're not horrible people. They're actually wonderful people. And if you really asked them, what is it that you want in your nation, in your life? They would say, I want to be able to be healthy. I want to be able to be safe. I want to be able to provide for my family. I want my loved ones to have access to resources. And I want us to just be able to live, right? And you see that that's what most people want in this nation. I would really like to see what everybody in this nation would actually vote for if we had something like mandatory voting, where all barriers are removed and where we can actually hear what every person here has to say about what they want in our country. We haven't ever seen that. And it's this notion, if I say something like mandatory voting, where, people who have always lived in the US and have never really been involved in any other kind of political system, it seems like this very impossible thing, right? No way. How could that ever happen in the US? Similar to when I say guns need to go. Like this is not we should not all have access to guns. And they'll be like, that'll never happen in the US. But these things have happened in other nations. We've had gun overhauls. We've had mandatory voting put in place and tested, right? And so I actually think that's one of the first ways of actually getting closer to a true democracy is to remove all the barriers and everybody is expected to vote. And I think that those who are trying to maintain American patriarchy, who are like, we like the hierarchy and we want to keep it this way and we want to keep inequity and we want to keep many people in poverty and keep people from accessing resources, they're aware that most people actually would vote against that. And that's why we see things like President Trump trying to go into Texas and redistrict Texas, or we see people going to Georgia saying you no longer get to have water when you're standing in line to vote. Those are tactics that are telling me they actually agree with me. If we heard more people vote, we would probably have more policies that recognize all of our humanity. We would have more people saying, I just want to do well and I want my family to do well. And I'm realizing that my neighbor has to do well for that to happen for me too. And so I have more optimism and confidence in humanity
Mm.
than I think a lot of other people do. But I think that the signals we're getting from those who would disagree on policies that I would try to implement is that they agree with me. Most people probably would vote against this notion of hierarchy and extreme inequity in our country.
Mm-hmm. So it's literally getting everyone's voice, counting every voice.
Yes.
Which is what the literal translation of democracy is.
Yeah.
And so if we were to see that might change the narrative. So I want to talk a little bit more about this the global implications, right? And so you mentioned someday you'll write an international book. Being here and taking in the information, I really was thinking so much about the patriarchy that I live in and the patriarchy that I experienced traveling around the different countries. And you've said that every country has their own format, their own way of it. But I distinctly feel like two things that you covered in the book. One is religion, because at the underlying space of it, there was this divine, manifest destiny that was part of the reasoning and ultimately landed itself into our constitution that is based on this global patriarchy that also is the outgrowth of colonialism.
Absolutely.
Or vice versa, either way. And so when I think about colonialism, patriarchy, and then how this now becomes an economic engine, where do you see, because its effect on you has been erasing your ability to make money on it. But if to think about the global systems and pare it down to prescribe something that's more of the international concept of like, how do we address this internationally if we look at those other systems and looking at the history that you've done and experienced, what are your thoughts on that?
So many thoughts. So many thoughts on that. Yes. So definitely very important, as you mentioned, that I do not believe the U.S. created patriarchy. We have the only patriarchy. I also have no interest in rating the patriarchies, which they're all bad. They're all bad. We don't like it. And yes, from all the places that I lived, I saw different forms of patriarchal systems. But why I wanted to focus on American patriarchy first is this lack of understanding in the US that we live in a patriarchy, and also because it's such an influential patriarchy in the world. And I think our path to dismantling patriarchy globally is actually more projects like this, where we name how patriarchy exists in each of these different places. Because patriarchy in the US is very different than patriarchy in India. It's very different than patriarchy in Mexico because of our different histories and who the quote unquote founders were and the documents that they wrote and how they systematized something that was unnatural, that was created by human hands. And that is actually how we will better track the growth and the spread of patriarchy. If I say in the US, I can signal that in 1776, our founding fathers decided that they were going to write a constitution where they only named men. And when Abigail Adams says, do better by us, by the monarchy, and they say, no, we will not. We are going to do better. We're going to do our own thing. We are going to create our Republic of Men, and we are going to do better than the French. This is an important thing that they state because they're aware that in France, women were emancipated. So we can't claim that the founding fathers were just doing what they knew. They are specifically choosing patriarchy that relies also heavily on racism to persist. So we can signal that in the US. We can circle that on the timeline and say 1776, they make this decision. So that is actually how, if I have this vision that one day we will create this kind of global understanding of all of these moments and lines across all nations that say this is how this is going to persist. And I completely agree. Colonialism is what brought this to life across the globe, because if we look at some of the original belief systems of, let's say, Ghana, let's say Nigeria, West African cultures, it was much more inclusive, very feminist, in fact, very honoring of women, of mothers, without there being a hierarchy of women, but saying everybody has a role to play. There's balance here. If we're thinking about Vodun or other religions, we're thinking even voodoo and Haitian voodoo, it is very inclusive of non-binary identities. It elevates everybody's status by saying we all have a role to play. The animals around us have a role to play. The nature around us has a role to play. And so we then see a clear interruption of that when colonialism meets the continent and says men need to be elevated. We don't accept non-binary identities. We don't. So most indigenous cultures actually were very inclusive.
Yes.
What we would now say is progressive. That was actually more our natural way of being. And so that for me is when it becomes even more heartbreaking, right? That like now in Ghana, it's very anti-LGBTQ.
Yep.
That you see reproductions of patriarchy that was not natural to our way of being. I feel heartbroken in the US when you have Black men who are reproducing patriarchy and hurting all Black men, but the ones who are hurting Black women around them when this system was not built by them nor for them.
Exactly.
And so it's a long answer to say, you have to track all of the moments where humankind, and mostly men, but there are women who protect it too, and probably people of all genders who protect the system, sometimes subconsciously, but where they take action and say, we choose this, and we choose this, and we choose this, because it happens over and over again. So that's how we will actually be able to find a clear line and a timeline of, okay, so like, when did this really begin and why? I mean, I think it will go all the way back to Christianity and the creation, probably Judaism as well. Several religions that claimed that there was a male deity that decided everything. There's a lot of theory around this, and I lean towards this notion of the female body could produce children, and therefore men felt they needed to create a being that started it all to begin with. So yeah, I think it goes, there's probably a lot that we could say. And I hope that more projects come out of this. Like I would love to see a book that is like Ghanaian patriarchy. So we can, the moment that it's chosen. And I think that that's our path forward. Honestly, I think that's how we will finally dismantle it.
Wholeheartedly agree. And I want to put a pin in that for a moment because I have another question that follows on that. But because we're talking about mindset to some extent, I want to ask you about your mindset hack. So how are you hacking your mindset these days?
So many different things, I'd say. I kind of going back to an earlier answer that I gave, I have just shifted entirely how I see myself. I have so much more confidence. I have so much more just belief in what I can do. And this clear feeling of I'm just getting started.
Yay.
There's so much more to do. And that's why I'm now in this space of, wow, there's like probably honestly like 10 different projects I'm really working on in terms between the movies and between the books and between just everything. And it just feels really exciting to live more in this space of here's what I'm doing next and here's what I'm going to keep doing versus before it was like, oh, I'm just so grateful that I have this one book idea and I hope it is received well. And now I'm more in the space of just, it's all going to come together so long as I keep trusting myself and listening to myself. And I mean, it also comes back to this belief in I really am trying to return to understanding our practices pre-colonialism because it's this interaction even with this higher power and our ancestors. Like I've been feeling such a shift around why I even get these creative ideas. There's purpose to it. There's a higher meaning to it. And I don't hold myself back at this point.
I love it. I love it. So that is a great segue into where I put a pin because I am in the space where I'm raising a fund and it's called the Pan-African Creative Trust Fund.
I do, yeah.
And the idea is to fund creators across the Pan-African diaspora to create educational, informational content across platforms. And so when you speak about, I hope one day that there's a Ghanaian erased, different stories across the diaspora, that is exactly what I'm thinking of. And part of that content stream serves as the framework to some extent of creating a curriculum for what I think is the next level of school. And so in your last chapter, when you thought about kids and how we change it from them, and that's why this download came to me about the PACT Fund, because it really is about children. It's like, how do we get them to be the leaders that we need them to be? Yeah. So when you think about your children and educating them and taking that idea, if you can share a little bit about that vision, because it was beautiful and it was beautifully put in. It's exactly what I see is we need to change what this idea of how do we educate each other is about. Yes. Tell us more.
That's so beautiful. I love that inspiration. I'm so excited about this fund. That's going to be amazing.
Yes, thank you.
Really base my belief around children. There was one quote that I read when I was doing research for the Three Mothers, and it's by June Jordan, and I quote her in both my books. And I don't have it verbatim, even though I quote it all the time. But basically she says that every time a child is born, the world begins again. And so just that simple phrase or sentence of when a child is born, the world basically starts anew with each child. And that's beautiful. Like, that's transformative. But what we end up doing with kids is stifling that new world and telling them instead, actually, this is how our world works. So I see that you're trying to show me this identity of yours, but that scares me. So I would rather you just do the thing you're supposed to do. But you're a young girl, so I need you to do this instead. Or, no, son, you cannot put markers on your fingernails. Like, these are examples. I don't do these things.
Yeah.
But where we're stifling their creativity, we're telling them the way we think things are supposed to work. And then instead we just stay in these cycles of the world repeating itself versus allowing them to show us what new world begins with them. And so if we can shift our mindsets around parenting, and not only biological parenting, but kind of community parenting, because I believe societies thrive when children are seen as everybody's children, right? We still honor the parents. We still honor, especially the mother, right? In the situations where there is a mother, to say, hey, tell us as the leader of this, and we want to support you. We still need to honor that. But where community comes around children, and you see a child walking down the street and you say, hey, we're here to protect you, and I hope you're doing okay. And kids can walk themselves to the park because we see them as ours.
Mm-hmm.
If we all shift our mindsets and instead look at them every day and say, what world are you bringing us? And how can I help it happen? That's really exciting. And that's what we all really deserve to hear.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, there's protections that need to be in place. I have 3 kids. A lot of times when I start that answer, I think people look at me like she has no idea what she's talking about. Like, wait till she has children. You know what I mean? But for readers, listeners, I have a 6-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, I have a 2-year-old, and I know they're young. I know there's a lot of parenting where I will learn more along the way. But yes, there are moments where I have to say, hey, honey, no, actually, we do need to go to sleep now.
Yeah. Some health and wellness. Yeah.
Guidance. Like, kids still need guidance, right? They are looking to the people in their lives to show them some guidance.
Yeah.
But they don't need boxes. They don't need to be confined. We are just supposed to help them get to their vision of what their purpose is here on this. And that's what we're all trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Why are we here? None of us know for sure. Taking guesses. And so it's a really wild thing that we try to impose so much on kids, but especially when it comes down to things that are so superficial and basic, like a boy painting his nails. Why putting color on your nails feel like such a charged thing for some parents that they would go so far as to hurt their child? There's so many parents who don't realize what they're replicating because they're fearful that if their kid doesn't fit into the world as it currently exists, something's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And so some of that is pretty subconscious. And the last thing I'll say is I think parenting comes down much more to intuition than many people are led to believe. And I'm grateful for the research that I was doing while I was with these babies and as I'm raising them, because I believe in my intuition. So if a doctor says, oh, don't co-sleep with your kid, you're going to roll over them. But I feel like I'm supposed to lay next to my baby. I'm going to lay next to my baby. And then I'm going to look up why that doctor says that. And it's because there's studies where people who were drunk.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's not normal.
No, our instinct actually would be to protect our children.
Exactly.
And so if you're hearing these messages that you don't really know and your instinct is wrong, so just listen to me. We're interrupting so much of that initial phase of life, which is just let this baby know that you are there for them. That's all they need. They don't need a schedule yet. They don't need to be separate of you or independent. They just need to know that they've entered a world where they will be taken care of. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. The journey of life. So we've talked about your book. We love it. And it'll be in the show notes. Obviously, people will have to access it. And please, it's such a great read. And
thank you so much.
Before we go, we want to know a little bit more about when you're not being a mom, when you are being a mom, but when you're not writing, we're not being creative. Who are you? What are you reading? What do you watch? What are you watching? What are you listening to? Tell us. What are your favorite reads, watches, or listens these days?
These days, I am reading Covenant of Water. I've been reading it for weeks because it's very long. This book is so long, but I'm liking it a lot, and I will be done with it, I think, probably in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
I am watching, I'm a big fan of competition shows. So
interesting.
There's a new season of Amazing Race out right now. So I can watch Amazing Race. But also the new show, have you heard of All Her Fault?
No. What is it on?
It's on Peacock.
Okay.
But it's about a child that is kidnapped, basically. And the storyline is very feminist because it's talking about how everybody is now like blaming the mom because they're like, well, like, why didn't you pick him up that day? And she's like, I was at work. And they're like, were you trying to like put work ahead of your child? It's just like it's basically they've taken the experience of motherhood in a patriarchal system and turned it into this thriller where something happens to the child, all the blame is placed on her and no one's like questioning the father. It's really, really fascinating. So
interesting. Okay. Those are good.
Like 3. So those are my recommendations.
Okay.
And
good.
What else? Okay. Who else am I? I do a lot of yoga. I time to myself and just kind of time with my own brain and prioritizing sleep.
Yeah. So important.
Really good. So
important. Yeah. Yeah. Quick question. What is your favorite type of yoga?
Oh, so I've been doing Moto yoga, which is, I think, the organization, but it's it's kind of like, I hate to say the B word in yoga, which is Bikram, but it's kind of like that. He was not a good dude. Progression of the poses. It's kind of like that. Less Bikram is all about like just really forcing your body into position. Yeah. Moto is not like that. It's more like how you protect your body while still getting it. So I've been loving it. Okay. And then, I do like my Peloton. It's also just nice to have an easy workout at home. So not easy in terms of what you're exerting, but just like I can just get on it.
Okay. Those are good tips. Got some wellness, got some entertainment, got some intellect. I love it. I love it. Anna, this has been so much fun. I'm so happy to see your face again. And are you coming up? Will you be on campus in May or will you be busy?
Oh, yeah. We have the Black Alumni Summit.
We do.
I want to. Yeah. Michael said to Michael, I was like, all right, we should go. And he's like, hopefully we're asked to speak so we can just go for free.
I know, right?
I was like, I don't know if it's going to happen this year.
I'm going to put a word in. I'll put a word in.
Yeah, thank you so much. But it's so close to where, easily. I love coming back to campus. So hopefully we'll be there. And I'm hoping to take the kids to Ghana next winter. So.
Oh, lovely. So if I'm around in either places, I'll be going in May.
Fun. Okay, great. That could be more reason to come. I'll come.
Yeah. All All right. Do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
Oh, I would just say, what I was saying about kids earlier and how all of us were supposed to hear that it's not too late to kind of do that for yourself. So you're like, okay, I'm going to start over and make sure that I do this with kids in my life. You can do that with yourself too. Like what would you have not been told you were supposed to do one or the other things because of these binaries that have been imposed on us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Return to some of those creative spaces that you might have shut down.
I love it. And that's one of my guests once said, at some point you have to parent yourself, and you can reparent yourself.
You can.
In a different way. Oh,
that's actually my last one of the projects I'm going to be launching soon is kind of these 5-minute episodes per week that are just how we reclaim some of the things that have been taken from us because of this system. So we posted on that. But I just think we need a little bit more guidance because none of us knew. Our parents didn't know either.
They didn't. We're all just winging it.
Yeah, like my mom was wonderful. My parents are both wonderful, but there were ways in which sometimes there were boxes placed on us. So we can always remove them. It's not too late.
Yes, indeed. So catch Anna on her Instagram because she's a great activist. I love her shorts. I love all of that. So you can experience the activist Anna on Instagram and other great things. And so thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate excited for conversation when my next book comes out.
Yes, indeed. All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcast. Please do share, subscribe, check out the show notes. You can get all of the lists of interesting insights that you've heard on the podcast. And until next time, bye for now.